Hello and welcome to our video series on Tech for Good. In this series we'll be chatting to values-led business owners and discuss what Tech for Good means to them. Enjoy! So hi, we're back once again for another Tech for Good talk. Today I'm joined by Andrew Johnson from the With Andrew Johnson suite of apps. Andrew, it'd be great if you could just introduce yourself and give us a wee bit of background.
Hi Josh, thanks for the invite. Delighted to be here. I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist for the last 26 years, working with stress management and addictions and pain control and a ton of other stuff. Quite quickly in my career, got into group work and meditation and mindfulness before it was fashionable, so to speak. Well, certainly before it was fashionable in Britain and in Scotland. And I've sort of balanced that by also being a bit of an early adopter in tech, a bit of a, I don't know if it's a nerd or a geek or whatever the terminology is, but I've always been fascinated in technology. And
I think we call ourselves entrepreneurs these days.
Is that what it is? That's a better word, I have to say. Thank you. So yeah, that's true. I should remember that. And because of that, I get very early into the App Store. So my recordings, with the help of my ex-business partner, became apps. In fact, we released the world's first meditation app back in January 2009, which doesn't seem that long ago, but this was really, really early in the App Store. So I've been in that sort of journey in the tech side of things for 12 years now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2009, that's only about 2 years after the App Store launched, barely, maybe even less.
Well, yeah, my memory is that the App Store had launched at that point in the USA, but had very much like the iPhone, it came out in the USA. There was a delay in it coming to Europe.
Yeah.
I had got 3 of them from New York. And I think I wasn't the first person in the UK to have them, but I had them very early when you had to actually download some software and crack the system so that it would work for UK cellular.
Yeah, that would be jailbreaking.
That was jailbreaking, yeah. Very, very early jailbreaking on the first iPhone 3. And I think when our first app came out, I'm sure it just was, the App Store was just about to open in Europe. So it was really early days. I think there was something like 25,000 apps on the App Store. So a big difference to now.
Yeah, no, totally. So what drew you to producing an app?
It was one of those great coincidences, Josh. So as a therapist, I always had recordings. They went from, and this has been a learning curve for me, but they started off on cassette, giving them to clients. Then as technology advanced and computers started getting cheap external or internal CD burners, I started putting my recordings onto CDs. As business increased a bit, I got them professionally done as CDs, just in time for Steve Jobs to announce the iPod. And then everything took a step up. It took a step up with digital delivery of MP3. So I was really early in that, although the sales of what I was doing with MP3s were tiny, but it was beer money, really. But in mid to late 2008, I got an email in from the person who was then to become my business partner, a lawyer in Seattle who had said he had been coding previously as a hobby for the Palm Pilot, had developed a very early app for the iPhone, but him and his wife had been listening to my Deep Sleep CD. And he emailed me saying, look, I think this is going to be kind of big, this whole App Store thing. I think your content could be really good. Can we talk? And we did. And within about 2 or 3 months, the first app came out. So it was I have to tell you, at that point, I thought it was going to be just a little income stream, but it changed radically as the volume of phones increased, and then of course Android came out, and off it went.
Yeah. So I think when I was doing a little bit of housekeeping, I saw that you got what 25, is it 17 or 25 million streams or downloads to date?
17 million, I think, is the
Yeah.
calculation at the point. Yeah, it's kind of hard to keep up with it. I've got some of my recordings are on other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a small selection of my recordings on Insight Timer, which is one of the biggest meditation apps in the world. And I've been with them a bit, long term. I put some free recordings on it first before they monetized.
Mm-hmm.
But I checked a couple of weeks ago, and we're just about to pass 6.5 million streams of my recordings on that platform alone. So I sort of need to keep upping this.
Yeah.
Guess. I think we've had in the App Store, I think we're about 12 million downloads, including the free ones.
Yeah.
But that's over 10. That's over 12 years.
Yeah.
Well, it is, and it's fantastic. It's slowed down tremendously, obviously, over the last few years, simply because there are now, I don't know, 5 million apps in the App Store or something like that. Yeah. There's some big players in the meditation space, but we're bringing out new products to try and compete with that, or well, not compete, but bring us up to a level playing field.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's brilliant, and I think that the fact that you're a pioneer of sorts in that space is fantastic, and it's obviously given a big helping hand to millions of people. If you're reaching far left and right, across the globe.
Well, absolutely. Getting the difference between moving from MP3s to apps was extraordinary, and it was a bit of a learning curve, because of course as soon as the infrastructure started building, it became obvious that to me at that point it seemed like the pricing was in a race to the bottom. I was selling CDs at $12.99 sterling, and when the MP3s came out, I thought, well, I'll drop it a bit. I don't need to post them, so it's $9.99, and people were buying them. And the apps came out, and all of a sudden they're $3 or $1.99 sterling. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how's this going to work? But of course, the volume of sales was extraordinary. And because then it gave a huge new market, because we put out 2 completely free recordings. We didn't, at that point, you couldn't put push notifications in. We just gave them away free, hoping there'd be a lead in to the paid ones. It became very obvious very quickly that there was an awful lot of people benefiting from these recordings. And I still to this day am getting emails in saying that people have been listening to these recordings for the last 10 years and really benefiting. So it's great.
That's great. Yeah. So with had a few conversations now, and one of the last guests I had was Anna from Zavfit, and she was talking about how people are much more in touch with their sense of well-being and self-worth and sense of self. Have you noticed a kind of change in the demographic of people that are accessing your recordings over time, or have you found there's been a kind of a shift at all?
Yeah, I mean, as right across the board, whether it was as one-to-one clients or people attending group work, or the audience I had with my recordings, and I can gauge that relatively well on my Facebook audience. It was always about 80% female, and in a certain band between sort of 25 to 45, mostly female. That has changed dramatically over the last couple of years, and especially with COVID. There's a lot of younger and older people tuning in now, a lot more men, a lot more discussion about mental health, well-being, best practices and things like that. So it's been a real culture shift, I think, and it's speeding up.
Yeah,
I think that this idea of mental health, that those 2 words, if you just, no one ever says physical health and it has a stigma. And I think that if you regard, No one ever says physically healthy, I'm 100%. No one ever, no, not even the greatest elite athletes would ever say they're 100% physically fit.
Yeah.
So I think, how dare we, any of us, say that we're mentally fit? None of us are. We all have ups and downs, but I think people are starting to recognize that mental health is just all about, even in its simplest forms, just like getting a good night's sleep, just being a little bit more positive. It goes much deeper, of course, but yeah.
Well, I think it's the same way that, we kind of do what we're supposed to do, our daily exercise, and get, your 30 minutes and so on. It's the same. You look after your physical self. Some of us better than others, and you have to do the same to your mental health, and it has equal importance, if not more. And it's something that Louis Theroux always talks about. He regularly gets counselling and therapy because he wants to keep on top and make sure that he's looking after himself, because he's aware of his own stuff, and he works with challenging material. So it's just a case of let's look after ourselves. So with coronavirus, as you said, there's been a massive influx of people being forced to slow down and stop and notice. They're like, okay, well, actually, this is something I can work on, or I have time to work on it, or actually, just there's more acceptance, as you say, there's kind of a lessening stigma around mental health, and so people are maybe be more open about it. So, yeah.
For sure, there's a lot of companies that are, I hear quite a bit of companies who perhaps are pulling out or reducing office space simply because people are working from home, and a percentage of people will want to continue to work at home. But I do hear of companies putting the budget that they're saving in office space into well-being. And I think that's a very healthy shift. And they want to not only do it, but they want to be seen to be doing it. It's a little badge to say, look, we're doing this for our staff, and encouraging the staff to take some time and breathe and get better sleep and drink more water and take more time to sort of build resilience. Because it's been a major shift what's happened in the last year.
Yeah. So the reason why we're here today is to talk about tech for good. And I think that your offering certainly fits that bill. You're providing a product and a service through a technological delivery, and you're bringing good to everyone's lives. Is that something, when you first started, that was an ambition of yours, or did it come naturally? So how did that kind of come about in the first place?
Well, it's strange. It's strange. As a therapist, you see one-to-one clients, you see them for an hour and off they go, theoretically. With the recordings, it always seemed that I could get to a bigger audience. And it seemed to me that my job, and I think it is still my job and my passion, is to introduce this world of eyes closed meditation or mindfulness or visualization or resilience or whatever it's called, to people who have never entered that world before. And it can be quite scary, because meditation and mindfulness comes with quite a bit of baggage. Is it spiritual? Is it too woo-woo? And there have been lots of instances over the years where companies have wanted to introduce some form of mindfulness or meditation, and the person has arrived in flowing Jesus robes and sandals and has asked civil servants to all hold hands and hum. Now, I'm making a little bit of a joke of it, but it's not far from the truth. So it seems that if I can use technology to introduce this world that is tremendously beneficial to people who have never experienced it before, then I'm doing my job well. And I like to think that that's what's happened. There's a lot of people who have been on this journey with me, and maybe have started off just with breathing exercises or simple stuff, and then a year later I hear from them, and they're on a journey doing yoga training in the Andes or in Bali, and I think, good God, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So it's all about your own personal journey and allowing people the freedom to do whatever they want to do within that, and not putting barriers in their way. The technology has just allowed that message to get out much quicker and much wider.
I think that you're allowing people to create their own safe space to engage with it, because as you say, if this is someone's first interaction with well-being and mindfulness, then it can be quite daunting, especially if you're of a certain character that doesn't necessarily kind of recognize it or pay it much attention. So I think it's a great way to allow people to take it at their own speed.
Absolutely. I think. Sorry, Josh, carry on, please.
No, on you go.
Well, I was just going to say that when my first step in helping people with recordings or courses is just teaching basic relaxation, and so many people have lost the ability to truly relax, to switch off. We walk about all day dealing with stuff and start to think that the way we feel is normal. And when you can rebuild what's called the relaxation response in yourself, and realize that it becomes an inbuilt habit, you just become someone who can relax. It has tremendous benefits in all areas of your life.
Yeah.
And it's hard to measure. This is one of the things I've found over the years, that when people learn to relax, truly relax, and to sleep better, and then maybe to get into meditation and mindfulness, they just become better versions of themselves, more rounded, more complete. But it still feels quite natural to them. And what I've found is interesting is it tends to be members of their family or friends or colleagues that will say to them after a couple of months, "My God, you're looking good," or you're not shouting down the phone as much as you used to.
Your shoulders are sitting back a little bit. And
your shoulder, yeah. And at that point, people start to recognize, oh, that's interesting. And it's much the same with certain forms of exercise, like meditation. It's only when you stop it for a while that you realize the positive benefits it had.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I'm guilty of not fully relaxing or not realizing that I'm relaxing. So I'm glued to a screen of some description, whether it's laptop, TV, phone, and I don't really know if that can be considered relaxing, even if you find it relaxing. And it's not until, for me, it's maybe more of a combination, and I kind of identify it as that sense of feeling wholesome. When you take a breath and you're like, that was a good day. And I'm like, okay, well, actually, it wasn't a single activity for me. It was a collection of activities that pieced together, and it was like, that was good.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. One of the difficulties with the computer generation is we are sitting relatively still. I know what I'm like if I'm working on something. I can sit for 2 or 3 hours almost without moving. And then you stand up and you go, my God, that's how I'm so sore. Creak.
Yeah.
And that, I've got a pretty decent desk and a pretty decent setup and a pretty decent chair, but you just think, wow, it's incredible. And the pressure that we put on our shoulders and our neck with smartphones and tablets is extraordinary. I also have a theory. I think I'm pretty accurate with this. There's a lot of people. The other pandemic that's going on at the moment, Josh, is lack of sleep. At any one point, it's something like 50% of adults are having difficulty sleeping, which is shocking. And I do believe it's because we are, for the first time in history, we are able to access entertainment and information immediately.
Yeah.
We have, when I was a kid, when I was even a teenager or in my 20s, there were times of boredom or daydreaming or contemplation. If you were on a long bus journey and you didn't have a book, I'm talking even before, what would be the first thing? The Walkman. Yeah. So even then, even before the Walkman, with no personal music, it's absolutely mad to think about this. But if you didn't have a book or a newspaper, or you were in conversation with someone, what did you do? Well, you did nothing. And there were times in life where people always had periods of time where they did nothing. So I think there was a lot of boredom, of contemplation, of daydreaming. And in those times, the mind processed things. It needs that space. Now, you could say it also does that in meditation and mindfulness. In fact, it does. But I think what's happening at the moment is every spare moment is spent, for most of us, doing something. Then we go to bed at night, we close our eyes, and the thoughts that should have been processed during the day come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take much for us then with those thoughts to stop us falling asleep.
Yeah. So see, on that, it's quite interesting. So back in the day, the idea of mindfulness wasn't really a thing. Mental health wasn't really a thing. And do you think that is because people were, in theory, exercising their mental well-being a bit more by having that time to think, and therefore were, maybe not addressing things directly, but they had that time, and now we're having the same way we have to allocate exercise because we live more sedentary lives, and we're now allocating time for mental health through meditation and different practices. Do you reckon that factors in?
There is a part of that. So from a sort of processing unconscious thoughts or just allowing things to percolate,
mm-hmm.
that was easier in the past when there was periods of boredom or contemplation. But there's absolutely no doubt that there was mental health issues. There always have been mental health issues.
Yeah.
It would have been called something else. A lot of people will say to me, oh, well, it used to be bad backs. Bad backs were the excuse to take some time off. But it would be, if people genuinely had a bad back or a sore, a dreadful tension in their neck or shoulders, it possibly was caused a lot of time by stress.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with stress is not necessarily feeling stressed, it's how long you hold it for.
Mm-hmm.
So people can go through quite traumatizing times, but are able to let go of it. But if you get a steady drip, drip, drip of stress, and then your mind plays on it and doesn't let go of it, it will start to have physical effects. Now, I was talking on an online group about this the other day, and again, this is only my theory. This is only my stuff, but I do believe that all of us have a genetic weak link. And with time and stress, where all the negative chemicals are getting pumped through our body and the adrenaline, eventually, with time, that genetic weak link, for the want of a better expression, will pop. Mm-hmm. And that could be a skin condition, or it could be migraines, or it could be athlete's foot, or it could be digestive problems. And so all of those things where people are going to the doctor and getting the symptoms treated could have a root cause. And there's no doubt that they're physical things that are happening. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that athlete's foot is physical or skin condition is physical. But it's the levels of stress that are amplifying it.
Yeah.
And it's quite startling over the years when I've said, people will say, I've got this eczema on my arms and it's really bad and it bothers me and it's unbelievable. And I say, well, what makes it worse? Oh, when we're really busy at work. Okay. What makes it better? Oh, well, when I go on holiday, it disappears. And you go, come on.
Yeah.
So instead of the doctors, and with the greatest respect to doctors who are unbelievably busy and, doing amazing, amazing jobs. But it used to be with a bit more time, the doctor might say, well, isn't that interesting? Maybe you should try and do some relaxation, some yoga, some breathing, some Tai Chi, some meditation, learn to relax, do whatever. But now it's, well, here is the cream that you put on, or here is the pill that you take. Now, doctors are obviously, as mindfulness and things like yoga are getting more and more accepted, they're starting to say, take some time in nature, mm-hmm. Go and exercise. And certainly for me, in all the training that I've done over the last 26 years, the number one thing that people can do is get out and walk or stretch and release those natural chemicals that combat the negative. Exercise is by far, and it doesn't need to be running a marathon, but just going for a walk, preferably by the sea or preferably in nature, and just switching off from everything. So letting the mind relax, letting the body exercise just a little. Movement is hugely important.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that, with coronavirus, people spending more time at home, not having a commute of sorts, it certainly led to me not leaving the house for days at a time because I was just working. I'd go to the food shop at the weekend, and that was it. So we ended up getting a dog, which is great.
Fantastic.
So now an hour a day out walking, all weathers, and it's good. It blows the cobwebs away. It takes me to different places, and yeah, it definitely helps, and it gives you a focus as well. That's not yourself. So yeah, no, definitely that, and getting outside, taking up golf, spending time away from your environment where you're just like stagnant.
Well, absolutely, and it's a common thing. The Dalai Lama's got a great quote that says you should meditate for, I think it's 20 minutes a day. You should meditate for 20 minutes a day unless you're really, really busy, in which case you should meditate for an hour a day. And this is a very common thing that people will say to me, I don't have the time to put 20 minutes aside for relaxation or meditation. And some of them truly believe that. Happens with a lot of men, and they just don't do it. But for the percentage of men, especially, who build a habit of going into some sort of quietness, contemplation, you could call it prayer, you could call it what you will, meditation or mindfulness, or just simple relaxation, they are even more productive, even more on the ball, even more in touch with their intuition and greater clarity. And that happens 99.9% of the time. Yeah. And it's the same with exercise. Put an hour aside or whatever for a walk, you will get probably much more done during the day because you're firing in all cylinders.
You cleared the fog. I was actually chatting to a friend about that during the weekend. You get into a haze when you're just focused. Your mind's exhausted and everything is a struggle, and it's like going through soup and it's a bit of a fog. So yeah, I think definitely getting out, clearing your head, taking that time is really important. And it should be encouraged.
Well, absolutely. So, and if you read the books about the great creative minds, Einstein and Beethoven and Henry Ford and Marie Curie and all of them, every single one of them will say at some point that their great creative leaps forward were not sitting hunched over a desk. They were sitting by the river daydreaming. They were maybe not in the shower, that's a very modern thing, but they were in that relaxation mode. And certainly from my point of view, although I haven't been on holiday for a couple of years now, I remember that I would be relatively busy at work. And I'd go on holiday and I'd just sit by the pool and do nothing. And then suddenly have this creative brainwave. And learning then that I needed to write it down quickly and forget it because I was still on holiday. But stress and too much concentration and focus kills creativity. It absolutely knocks it for six. And we've got to find a way of letting go and tapping into our intuition and our creativity.
Yeah. Okay. So bring it back to Tech for Good for a minute. We've talked about your journey through Tech for Good, and you've the kind of how it's affected your audience over time. Have you seen a shift in businesses? Do you think more businesses are more conscientious about the impact that they have on society and the environment?
Yes, I see this a lot. I do. There's ongoing conversations a lot at the moment. My latest app release is about delivering meditation and mindfulness into the corporate workspace. And because of that, I've been having for the last 6 months little conversations, just not selling, not doing anything, just touching base with people that I know, talking about their staff and what their staff need. And there is definitely a much more open environment and discussion about how can technology help people with well-being, with even things like communication between teams, reminders to drink water, reminders to stretch, so many things. And this is accelerated, of course, because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, I don't know what your take on it is, but I would imagine that this process to home working might have taken the next 10 years without COVID, and it's taken a year.
I know. And I think that, I mean, for the large part of it, our team are very happy to continue working from home. I think it's really important to maintain the culture and then maintain communication and a bit of human contact. But I think what working from home affords you is flexibility. And I think that's what everyone needs to kind of work out a better work-life balance. And I think that kind of stems from being flexible with how and when you work. For sure.
I think so. I think it's also important to say, and this is the flip side to it, when I did a lot of corporate work, it became apparent to me that there was a certain percentage and a surprisingly large percentage of people that when they talked about stress, were talking about their home life,
mm-hmm.
their kids, their elderly parents, their relationships, the problems with money or finance or whatever it
mm-hmm.
would be. And a lot of people came into work, no matter how busy they were in work, came into work for that escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but just that they knew their boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are having to come to terms with mental health issues that have come up because they're working from home, because there's maybe dogs or kids or husbands
mm-hmm.
or wives or parents or people who just simply don't realize you're still working and are placing demands on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult and a different way of working for a lot of people. So and I know that there's a lot of people who are very, very cautious about things opening up again. How is it going to affect them? What's going to work? So I think we're all trying to find the balance.
Yeah.
And I hope companies are using tech for good to make it easier for colleagues and workers and service users and whatever to find that balance so that we can all still have boundaries and communication between teams and colleagues. But maybe it will take a different form. Maybe you and the guys from GearDAP will go for a 2-hour walk somewhere when we're all allowed to.
We've I actually had a meeting or a conversation with Lara and Angie about this the other day. We're desperate to be able to go for a walk with the team, and that's all it needs to be, because we've not spent any time in each other's company in so long. It would be great just to be able to go for a walk. So we're counting down the days for that.
It's not long.
Already Lara's now looking at, rather than we do monthly catch-ups with the team, maybe doing those in person as an afternoon walking rather than a video call. It's just making sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe to do that, and that everyone's doing what they're comfortable with rather than what's expected of them. Because it is in a still, though improving time, it's still very unknown and very trying. So it's just been mindful of that and don't want to put extra undue stress onto people. So
absolutely. We're all just testing the water at the moment.
Yeah, I know, and I think the big thing for us is, after COVID, what's going to happen, because there's been this huge working from home revolution, and everyone that we've worked with over the last year has been very happy to do it over video. We've obviously been able to deliver over video. So after COVID, will people still be happy to do that, or will they expect face-to-face meetings? Because we're now hiring remote positions. We're not encouraging as such, but giving people complete flexibility over how and when they work. So we need to make sure that that still works for the business and works for what our clients expect. So that's going to be the next
Absolutely.
hurdle, because the world doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't. But it's incredible when you figure out how much time, money, and effort was put into commuting.
Yeah.
And what a benefit that can be for people. I mean, my nephew lives down on the West Coast. He lives in Troon.
Mm-hmm.
He worked in an office in Glasgow. He's of the generation that he would eat out every lunchtime with colleagues, and it wouldn't, let's just say it's not a Marks and Spencer sandwich or a Greggs sausage roll. It's a meal.
Mm-hmm.
But when he told me what he was saving in time, never mind time, money from the 5 days a week train and the eating out, I was like, my God, it's startling how much money has been saved.
Yeah.
He's as happy as Larry.
Yeah.
So there's so many, he's even more productive because he's much more relaxed when he's starting his work.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
I know. Okay. I'm just trying to look at my questions because we've kind of just had a wee chat there. So just finally on the Tech for Good thing, do you think there's anything business should be doing more of, or that we could actively encourage businesses to do within Tech for Good?
Well, it's funny, if we're all working from home, we're on screens all day. And it's unfortunate that a lot of tech still relies on screens, doesn't it? So that's a strange balance. That it's a difficult one, Josh, because I'm only starting to build a team at the moment. And I'm finding it difficult to find the best ways of communicating with them. But there are a lot of solutions that have sprung up. In the last 6 months, there are an awful lot of mental health resources that have only become available because of technology and apps. I helped launch an app, not my app, but another company's app, maybe about 6 months ago, and they're doing live meditations. That's all they do. The app is for live meditations. And the number of teachers now on that is extraordinary, and the number of people who are tuning in every morning. And what they're doing is encouraging groups of people, workmates, colleagues, to all meditate at the same time. So there's these sort of things happening. I also think that, and strangely, things like WhatsApp have been very useful for people's mental health, where they can, negatively and positively, but just the ability to communicate by a quick 20-second voice message, and get it away, get the thought out, get it away. And I think, I think what we were talking about a bit earlier, the ability when things open up a bit to, as a team, get out, meet, walk. I don't know if that's got anything to do with tech. It probably hasn't.
Well, I guess that's part of it, is what is Tech for Good. It's just, I guess, leveraging the tools you have available to do something that has a positive impact.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that mindfulness has become very, very popular, primarily because it started getting a lot of scientific research, and they actually found that it had huge benefits. But forgetting that, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind it's become popular because of the ability to download an app and, in the comfort of your own home, be able to test it for yourself and get an experience that gives you a convincer that it is helping you. So for that reason, and that reason alone, I think that there is technology, mobile phones, these apps have opened up this area of mindfulness and self-help and mental health so much more than I ever would previously. I cannot see us being in the same situation, even with COVID, had it not been for these amazing programs that someone can say, have you tried this? And within 30 seconds, you can have it on your phone and be testing it for nothing. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary, rather than waiting for a Friday, getting in your car, driving to some community hall to sit on a wooden floor listening to people chanting and think, wait a minute, this is not for me. You can now test it in the comfort of your own home. And I think as more and more people, as more and more entrepreneurs see the massive benefit in helping people become their best selves, I think we will see some massive, huge shifts in what technology can do with mental health. I think we're only just scratching the surface. And I think artificial intelligence, and I think without any shadow of a doubt, virtual and augmented reality, and that for mental health is going to be a game changer.
Yeah. So for anybody watching and listening, how can they access your suite of apps?
Well, the best thing to do is just go to my website, andrewjohnson.co.uk, where all the links are. That's the best thing. If you put my name, Johnson, Andrew Johnson, into Google, and relaxation or meditation, you'll probably find me. Yeah. I am not the disgraced American president from or the Coventry City footballer. I'm a little bit down the line, but I'm on there.
But equally as important.
Oh, I would say more. Surely.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much, Andrew. It's been great to catch up with you. So everyone else, I guess we'll be catching up again shortly, and I'll be back with my next guest. Thank you.
Thank you.